Good morning, Anthony. How are you? I can't hear you. You might have to adjust some settings for Zoom. Try to talk again. Still can't hear you. You may have to, in the bottom left-hand corner, you see where the mute button is. If you click that little arrow, what microphone does it say same as system? Hit the, if you hit the chat bubble on the bottom, type your response to me just so I can have some sort of idea of what's going on. It should be, let's see, down on the bottom towards the middle, there should be a little bubble that says chat. Okay, can you see on that, when you hit that caret, does it say same as system, or where's the check box? Okay, and then go ahead and mute and unmute yourself. No, still can't hear you. Let's see if I can. How can I do this? Anthony, do me a favor, hit share screen. Do you have that option? Okay. See if leaving the meeting and coming back into it and allowing your microphone will do the trick. Let's try that.
I know I'm just signing on, but I have a question. The meeting's not being recorded yet, correct?
The meeting is being recorded right now. I can pause it if you would like me to.
I would. It should not start recording until everyone's here. We call it to order and it's reminded that it's being recording.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
And kind of kick us off.
Recorded.
Yeah, and my system just told me that I had a meeting in process, so that's good that I'm aware of that. All right, so for our public, I will say that the Calvert County Blueprint Committee is, we're conducting this meeting virtually, August 3rd, 2022. This is probably, I won't say the only time we'll do it at 9 o'clock, but this is a change. So as we get back on schedule for everybody else's schedule, it'll move to later in the day. And of course, that'll be publicized appropriately. So with that in mind, we'll move. Tony, did you have anything before we start? I shouldn't just jump in and take over.
I'm ready to go when you are, Mark.
All right, sir. And I know that we communicated before So for everybody's information, Joe Sampson, Dr. Joe Sampson is my co-chair going forward. Scheduling has been a bit since the change with the new superintendent coming in and some adjustments in Joe's workload, obviously. But we have Tony, and that's really what we need going forward. So in the future, Joe will be the co-chair with us and take part in these meetings directly. So with that in mind, Ruthie, if you would do a roll call for us.
Absolutely. I'm going to read your name. Just say here. Julian Willis.
Here.
Kevin Michael.
Well, Kevin's retired now.
Yeah,
Oh,
keep in
right.
mind that he
That's
may,
right.
yeah.
Sorry, my list is old. Wilson
Replace that
Perrin.
name with Dr. Joe Sampson.
Dr. Dr. Sampson. Melissa Goshorn.
Here.
Mike Shishler.
Here,
Joanna Stallings.
Here.
Donna Ostenso.
Here.
Stacy Taman.
Here.
Danielle Duval. Myself. And Tony Navarro.
Who is
Here.
myself?
Myself, Ruthie Buckler.
Thank you, Ruthie.
You're welcome.
All right, next item on the agenda is to consider, review, and approve the minutes for June 8th. Any discussion on that, on the minutes for June 8th? Is there a motion to adopt those minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Second? Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're all hands forward, Ruthie.
Yes, sir.
So at some point in this, obviously, does anybody, as we look at the agenda for today, and this is what we have to get used to. I mean, certainly, I know on here, Wilson and I, and we've been through a lot of agendas for Planning Commission, for the Board of County Commissioners, for the Board of Appeals, et cetera. So we don't have to follow everything that strict, but I do want to follow as closely to that format as possible. One of the things that we want out of this is obviously transparency to the public, transparency within this board itself. So as we move forward, just try to, you're more than welcome to keep me on track as we go forward in accounting for this. So while I'll try to keep it pretty simple, I do want to make sure that we follow all rules and regulations as we should. And I do, if you see, we do have the county attorney that sits on here. He's probably keeping me straight, although he won't say that. But I certainly appreciate having John Norris here. He can also chime in and make sure that if you see something out of the ordinary, that he'll do so on the committee's behalf. So with that in mind, is there anything to this agenda that any member thinks that we should adjust?
It's not so much. It's not so much to the agenda as it is to the recording piece, which I mentioned when I got on and saw it was already being recorded. When you have an official meeting like this and you're recording, it needs to be stated when the meeting is called to order. And I believe it's already being recorded and that has not been stated.
Okay, good point. I'll add that to my list so that we just do that straight up front. So yes, for those that are tuned in, this meeting is being recorded. And, there are a couple of reasons why we would record any public meeting like this, certainly for transparency, but it does allow us to go back and look at any directives that may have come out of it, look at the minutes and make sure that we've captured everything. But it's also for transparency, so folks can go back and look at it. So this meeting is recorded. All future meetings will be recorded and we'll state that up front. So I appreciate the input. Thank you.
Mark, regarding the agenda,
Yeah.
one thing that would be helpful would be maybe a minute or two update as to are we as Calvert County Public Schools on schedule for meeting the overall commitment and the due dates?
Okay. So as we go forward, kind of once we've called the order and we've gotten the agendas and all set on what we're going to discuss, the first thing we would do is go into basically where we stand.
I think John's saying.
I
Oh,
can't.
okay.
Yeah, but certainly we can do that, Wilson, and we can also get together offline and I get with the county attorney, just make sure that we have that in the right place. Obviously, it needs to be up front. So we'll do that so that not only this committee, but anybody that's tuning in kind of gets an update on where we are so that they can go back and research whatever they want. So I made a note of 2 items so far. That's the second one.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Nothing to change on the agenda as posted, except for adding those 2 items. The first is to make sure that we do announce the recording. The second is that we provide a quick update to where we stand as a committee and how we are moving forward. And I'll add that in, and you'll see that listed on the next agenda as it's published for all to see. Okay. Next item is new business. And Tony, I believe for the next 2 items, new and old, you're going to lead us through that?
Yes, thank you, Mark.
Yes, sir.
And Ruthie, if you could just bring up the PowerPoint. Okay, good morning, everyone. And just a quick word about Dr. Sampson regarding his schedule. He cannot be here today because he was selected to be a member of the Maryland State Department of Education's expert review team, and today is his first day of training. The Blueprint established the expert review team program to conduct reviews of at least 10% of Maryland schools annually and to make recommendations for improving their school's performance. We'll be presenting in greater detail at a subsequent meeting the expert review team program, as Calvert County Public Schools has 3 administrators and 1 teacher that were selected to participate in the program. And we look forward to learning about their experiences and what they can bring back with their learning for the Calvert County Public Schools. So previously in June, the committee reviewed pillar number 1, early childhood education, and pillar number 3, career and college pathways. Today, we are going to start, and I emphasize the word start, with a review of pillar number 2, high quality and diverse teachers and leaders, with a focus on national board certification, which is the foundation for the career ladder. Next slide, please. So the 3 focus areas for today are progress with the Accountability and Implementation Board, again, national board certification, which is a feature of pillar number 2, and NBC implementation exemplifies several of the recommendations of the Maryland Commission on Innovation and Excellence in Education and a guiding principle of the career ladder. And a third part is what should be our next steps for this committee. And I'm looking forward to a discussion with suggestions as to what should be our next activities. Next slide. So with respect to updates, the AIB board has been meeting in July work sessions on a weekly basis. And these work sessions serve to follow up the work focused on informing the draft of the comprehensive implementation plan. The AIB has invited guests to comment. They've invited the Maryland State Board of Education, the Maryland Department of Education, local school systems, and many other stakeholders. And during these work sessions, they've reviewed differences in the interpretation of the blueprint law, discussed what good implementation looks like, developed some solutions to issues raised but not yet resolved, and identify issues that require some recommendations and statutory changes. And overall, these work sessions served to provide a deeper understanding of the policy area, and guidance was provided in all of the 5 areas. And they delved deeper into the implementation and the outlined specific subtasks within each pillar to provide guidance for the process. And I spoke with Ruthie before the meeting started, and we're going to provide a link on the website so that anyone can go and listen to the AIB meetings, because they're all recorded, and also review the attachments and presentations that were given. Again, they met on July 14th with pillar number 2 and 5. July 20th was pillar number 3 and 4, and this past Thursday was pillar number 1, a focus on early childhood education. Next slide. Planning ahead, they have meetings scheduled once a month through December. And again, these are going to serve as follow-up work session focused on drafting the comprehensive implementation plan. And this is where the school systems will review the blueprint law, go over interpretation, best practices and implementation, and develop solutions to issues and make recommendations for changes where appropriate. Next slide. So now going to National Board Certification, and you'll hear the term NBC, and that means a National Board Certification issued by the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. An NBC teacher means a teacher who holds an active National Board Certification. And already amongst our school system and our colleagues were saying, I'm NBC certified, or I am an NBC teacher. Next slide, please. So what is National Board Certification? It was founded in 1987 by the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. It is recognized as the gold standard in teacher certification. There are 5 core propositions of NBC in which teachers are committed to students and their learning. Teachers know the subjects they teach and how to teach those subjects. Teachers are responsible for managing and monitoring student learning. Teachers think systematically about their practice and learn from their experience, and they are members of learning communities. And I will say that NBC certification is recognized as the gold standard. It's included in the implementation of the blueprint, and going forward in the blueprint, teacher evaluations shall be aligned to these 5 core propositions. And again, National Board Certification is the foundation of the blueprint's career ladder, because a teacher automatically moves to level 2 when they start to pursue an NBC certification. A teacher moves to level 3 upon attaining NBC certification, and a teacher can choose to go to the teacher track or administrative track of the career ladder upon level 3 and going to level 4. So again, it's a foundation to move up the career ladder. Next slide, please. There are some prerequisites for beginning your National Board Certification. You must have a bachelor's degree from an accredited institution. At first, you were one of the prerequisites was 3 years of successful teaching in 1 or more early childhood, elementary or middle or second schools. However, there is a proposed change where you can begin your certification in your first year of teaching, but you cannot be awarded the certification until you've completed 3 years of teaching. However, this will allow a teacher to automatically go to level 2 once they start pursuing that NBC certification. Next slide, please. Now, there are some NBC fee supports for teachers pursuing an NBC. Maryland Public School teachers pursuing an NBC will receive funding to cover the costs associated with their NBC candidacy if they meet the eligibility requirements. There is a shared cost program between the local school system and the Maryland State Department of Education. MSD will cover 2/3 of the program costs, and a school system will cover 1/3 of the program costs. And this is somewhat of an unfunded mandate. However, it is mandated. Next slide, please. So what is Calvert County doing with NBC certification? Well, this past October, we held an NBC information session for all teachers that were interested. We reviewed the blueprint. We went over what NBC was. We reviewed the NBC certification process, including eligibility prerequisites, certification area, cost, and the timeline. And we currently have 54 teachers pursuing NBC certification. Next slide, please. There is a guidance in terms of teachers that hold an NBC and if they're eligible for the NBC salary increases. And the Maryland State Department of Education gave guidance to all local school system in terms of defining what a teacher was. A teacher is defined as someone who is primarily responsible and accountable for teaching students in the class. They must be certificated. And with respect to primary, responsible, and accountable, it's a teacher of record or a co-teacher, including special education or ESOL, who delivers instruction and is responsible for a student or group of students' academic progress in a pre-K through 12 public school setting. And this definition is given so that these teachers who hold an NBC will be eligible for the NBC salary increases that I'm going to go into in a moment. Next slide, please. There was some further guidance, and MSDE did say that all teachers who serve in a co-teaching model where they go into a special education teacher will go into a classroom and teach alongside another teacher, they are also eligible for the NBC salary increases, as well as teachers of English language learners are also eligible for the NBC salary increases. Next slide, please. So with respect to salary increases and eligibility, all eligible NBC teachers shall receive a $10,000 salary increase effective July 1, 2022. And they have to be eligible, and an NBC incentives are a component of the career ladder, and NBC teachers will be required to opt into the career ladder effective July 1, 2024. And the career ladder involves NBC salary increases along with evolving job responsibilities. So we made those salary, go to the next slide, please, Ruthie. We made those salary increases effective July 1, and there are approximately 12 teachers that received that stipend. And with respect to principals in the future, they will have to be NBC certified as well. There may be a waiver for current principals, but by 2029, all principals should have a national board certification. And that means rising up through the career ladder by going through the administrative track. So CCPS has finalized the list of NBC teachers eligible for these salary increases. We've informed them, and their salary increases will take effect in the upcoming school year. So with that said, that's a snapshot of the NBC certification program. Again, it is a component, it is a foundation of moving up the Blueprint's career ladder, which is a major component of pillar number 2. Questions?
Tony, from the 54 teachers that attended your overview meeting, do you have any sense of how many are pursuing the NBC at this time, besides the 12 that already have it?
I think 54 are currently pursuing it, and we had over 70 people that attended the session.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure that we have 54 that are currently going through the certification.
So do they start the ball rolling on their own to contact the national group, or do they go through HR, and does Calvert County start the process for them?
They work in a cohort, but they work with staff to go through that program. But they are on their own for a certain amount in terms of going through the different requisites, different parts of the program.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mike, we do currently have 54 people pursuing NBC, but they are given support. Other questions?
Donna, do you get a sense that there's more interest among your CEA members for this?
That's kind of hard for me to answer. I know that there were some people who started last year and felt too overwhelmed by the process and dropped out. I know that there are some teachers who are planning to start this year, but it involves a time commitment and a lot of work. And depending upon where you are in your career, your family,
Sure.
it could be difficult to juggle.
Is there a set time limit that once you enter that process, you have to complete
Yes.
certain steps? There
Yes.
is?
I believe Tony can answer this exactly, but is it 3 or 5 years that once
I thought-
you start?
I thought it was 3, Donna.
I do too. I do believe it's 3. So like if you pass, let's say 3 of the components, or and you struggle with this one, you don't get your scores until December. That's period. So like a friend of mine finished one of the components in June, and she won't know until December if she passes that component or not. And that's true for everybody. No one will, even if you're like ready to do all 4 components you have finished, you won't know until December of every year if you pass those components or if you become nationally board certified. So if you struggle with, maybe it's the testing one, because that's one that I've heard from friends of mine that tends to be one that people maybe fail the first time around. That could be really frustrating if you get those components and then, you have to start all over again if you can't make it happen in 3 years.
Tony and Donna,
I will
I'm
say-
thinking maybe it might be helpful for us as a committee and for the board and the general public if we could get a snapshot of what the process looks like and what's required for teachers to do. Is that a possibility?
Yes, I can, we can do that and get a snapshot of the process and the requirements. When we had that information session in October, we had several teachers that recounted their experience in terms of gaining their NBC certification. And they talked about what they did and how they went through it. But I will say that Donna is right. I spoke with a teacher yesterday, and this teacher did say that it is a lot of work.
Well, it sounds like it's as if you're pursuing another degree, whether it's a master's or a doctorate.
Yeah.
It's a lot of commitment and time and work.
And Mike, I
Sure.
think the difference with, you're absolutely right with everything you said. The one big difference is that it's like this one-shot kind of deal. You submit whatever the project is or the test, you submit it that one time, and then you wait till December to know if you pass or not.
So if you're a candidate, excuse me, do you get a coach or a mentor to walk you through the process and to review what you're submitting?
So there are coaches or mentors available. So like MSEA, I put something out. They were looking for mentors. There was a small stipend they were going to provide. And so to the ones that are nationally board certified already, I let them know what MSEA was offering, and then kind of then connected them with MSEA, and then MSEA connected them with people across the state. So it wasn't necessarily that you got connected to someone in your county.
Sure.
That's what MSEA is offering, and that's what I made available.
And Don, I think that's excellent support to have colleagues working together and networking to get the certification.
I agree.
My last thought on this, and it's beyond the parameters of our committee, but I think the NBC process needs to have some sense of a grace period, because 3 years can fly by when you're working on something as detailed as this. So if somebody, I think Donnie, you were using an example, if somebody gets 3 out of the 4 requirements done and doesn't hit that 30-year timeline, well, I don't think you want to lose somebody who's invested so much into the process. You need to have some way to work with people.
And I believe that they're also responsible for paying the money back. Isn't that right, Tony? The
My
money that
goodness.
was put in?
There is some payback if you fail to follow through. There is.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I'm sure there'll be more to talk about this later, so.
That's like a double whammy, both the timeline in which to get it done, and then if you can't get it done because of life gets in the way, you're penalized for it, so.
Well, that's the old accountability word.
It is, I got it. It's a daunting path. We have the same thing in the county, I mean, where we pay tuition assistance, and, the idea is that you do well in school, and if you don't, you pay it back. I mean, so do we have anything else on Tony's presentation? Tony, I believe you're next.
Yeah.
with, old business, and it's public outreach campaign or public awareness.
Yeah. I think we need to put together a small group or a steering group with some ideas and plans for public awareness. We may have to wait a little bit until we get more details from the AIB, but certainly I think parents should begin to realize or know about the offerings for full-day pre-kindergarten, even more awareness for teachers regarding national board certification, and even overall regarding the public and our parents regarding how the blueprint is going to change education in our school system and across Maryland. I'm not so sure if right now is the time to start putting plans in place, because we have to know more from the AIB in terms of the implementation plan that's going to evolve the next school year, but a public awareness campaign is extremely important to do.
So Tony, my thought on that is, while we may not know exactly how to populate the information, I think the process by which we get that information out to the public can be discussed now. And the Board of County Commissioners made it known up front that they wanted to be partners. They wanted to be partners in this approach as we go forward, which is why we have this team put together. That being the case, I would offer up that as much as we can be involved in the assistance of pushing that information out with a department within our county government, we want to be partners. I can't be a co-chair, not also be co-chair to pushing out this information. So we have a very talented staff in both writing, audio, and visual capabilities, as I'm sure the school board does. My point is that we want to be equal partners to the degree that it makes sense. And I think we can start talking about that now. And I can pull those people together anytime that we need to have that discussion. And in fact, Ruthie comes from that background. So she has some inside information and I have some inside information. So we want to be part of the team going forward. So maybe we can talk about how to set up that subcommittee and then start talking about that now. So if they're interested parties, I think we should plant that seed.
I think that's an excellent idea, Mark, and we are going to expand with respect to communications and staffing in the Calvert County Public Schools. We have one person now that focuses on with communication, and I think we can get started right away.
So Tony, what I can do,
how that process can go forward.
Yeah, if you want, we can send an email out that would ask for individuals that might be interested, establish who I know that would be, I know they'll be interested on our side. So, and then we can kind of chime in, whether it's assuming it's individuals from this committee who get support from individuals outside of this committee is fine, but create that subcommittee and we can do that through an email so that all parties can have an opportunity to weigh in via email. And then when we come back at the next meeting, we can let everybody know who that is.
And, a thought popped into my head, maybe a blueprint network.
Okay. Yeah.
So involve different community organizations.
Yeah, the whole everything. I mean, we need to design, for that template, how we're going to reach out, who we're going to reach out, the frequency with which we're going to reach out. We can look at all of that. And like I said, we This is what we have a group that does this for a living every day. And I know we can be of benefit to this committee. So Ruthie will put together an email on my behalf, on our behalf, not my behalf, on our behalf, as we go forward to solicit participation.
Sounds good, Mark.
Okay, Tony, with that in mind, I mean, I don't know anything else unless the committee has response to what we just discussed about outreach. Okay. With that said, our next agenda item would be public comment. Ruthie will read the statement so that all parties that may want to publicly comment will have equal right to do so and equal guidance. Ruthie.
So for public comment, the Blueprint Committee has elected to follow the same rules for public comment as the Calvert County Board of County Commissioners, who adopted Resolution 689, intending to maintain the order and decorum of the governmental process. A copy can be found on the county's website on the page for the Blueprint Committee. The Ethics Commission has asked that we remind speakers at public comment that lobbyists, including those who seek to influence public policy, must register in advance. The floor has been open for public comment from persons joining virtually. If you wish to speak, please press *9 or use the raise your hand feature. Virtual speakers will be identified by either the last 4 digits of their phone number or their screen name and unmuted one at a time. If necessary, you may unmute yourself by pressing *6. Before beginning your comments, all speakers must identify themselves and whether speaking as an individual, where you will be allocated 2 minutes, or as a designated representative of a group, where you will be allocated 5 minutes.
So the question is, do we have any speakers? Andrew? Either by Zoom or by telephone. It appears there are no speakers, so I will move to the next agenda item, which is an item that we added to the agenda, and rightfully so. So at this point, this is the first time we will have done this, but it's no different than the commissioners or the Board of Education, where the committee members themselves have an opportunity to just express what they have on their mind and try to provide direction to the committee as we go forward. So normally we would go from one direction to the other. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to do this.
You want me to call the names?
Yeah, just go down the list, Ruthie, and then we will establish a process so that everybody knows exactly the process as we go forward. So.
Wilson Perrin, do you have any reports?
Yes, I just a comment. I'm listening to the Tony's presentation regarding the NBC that started 35 years ago, and I'm surprised that there should be some lessons learned. Some of the issues that were mentioned that we have with the the allocation of the 3 years and in December, are there any lessons learned from other organizations that's been using the process for quite some time that we can use to facilitate getting through this process for teachers in Calvert County?
Wilson, I think I can bring that up to some of the organizations that we work with, either MSDE or the AIB.
Yeah.
There needs to be maybe some more transparency for the teachers and community regarding this NBC process.
Okay, thank you.
Melissa Goshorn?
Hi, thank you. When we met last time, I had made a comment and a request really for us to work with the other counties to try and get some more feedback from the AIB, specifically around what they were going to be offering financially to each school system, especially as it pertains to these increases. so that we can better figure out as a county what the impact of these bonuses and these increases are going to cost, because they mentioned covering part of that, and there hasn't been clarity on what part of that they would cover. Also, around the whole Kerwin plan, there seems to be a lot of open questions that they continue to answer, but there's also a lot of concern from many counties about how we're going to cover the cost of this. And I had made a suggestion last week, or last time we met again, that we work with the other counties to really put some additional pressure on the AIB to answer these questions. Because we all know this is going to be a huge investment for the county, and money does not grow on trees. So I'm making the request again that we do that. I don't know if there's been any progress on that so far, but I'm going to continue to make that request.
Ms. Goshen, that's a good question, and there was legislation passed regarding specific funding in the blueprint. Mark, I'm wondering if our finance departments could get together and review that legislation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hold on a second. I will have that to you, Mark, and maybe perhaps for our next meeting we can have a review of that new law regarding the funding.
Okay. So yeah, Tony, that's perfect on that. I think that'll satisfy one, or at least get us moving in a direction of one of Melissa's points. The other one is, Melissa, I'm up. And I would assume the committee is up for how we would put together a point of contact, a small committee that would be dedicated to outreach to the other counties, make that contact with their group as well. So that's something that we can certainly talk about. We can talk offline, we can talk here, but my point is that we need to get that moving forward. I don't disagree that it would be nice to know on certain topics what the other counties' takes are. So we'll get that put together so that we have some information going forward.
I don't know if that's something that Joe Sampson has inherited from taking over for Kevin and Michael. I thought Kevin had shared a couple of times when he's had contact with the folks in Charles and St. Mary's County about what their committees or systems are doing. So
Mike, I agree.
I'm
I
just
agree.
speaking.
Part of the delay, Mike, is just that because of what Tony pointed out earlier, I knew that because I have met with Joe a couple of times already, that his interaction at the school level is something that they have reached out. Kevin had reached out before, but we need to solidify that and make sure that we can speak to it. And that's truly, I think, what Melissa's looking for, is that we as a committee know that there has been outreach and to bring that information back to this committee so that we're all on the same page. So I think we just need to, I think it's happening. I think we need to fine tune it so that everybody's on board.
Can I just, I'm sorry, that kind of meandered a little bit for me. Can I ask for clarification on exactly what that request was? That we're partnering with other counties to pressure the AIB?
Melissa, go ahead and state your comments, please.
Yeah, so I think there's two things. I think that we need to get clarification. It sounds like we, not this group, but we, the county, may have clarification on what the state will actually be providing to the counties as it pertains to the bonuses and the salary increases. Because in the last meeting, it was stated that the amount or the formula was unknown. So that's the first request. The second request is there is a lot of concerns throughout the state on some open questions that have remained open for a couple of months now. And in some areas where there's large concern about the blueprint as it stands, and maybe it's due to some gray areas. And so the request is that we partner with other counties to present a shared concern, front, or request to the AIB, so that they understand that it is several counties that have these questions or concerns or issues or requests for clarifications, and not just one-off counties.
So, and I'm really just asking for clarification. Do you not think that that is something that is being maybe spearheaded or discussed with the local implementation coordinators? Because they meet as well as then meeting with the AIB. So are
Yeah.
you saying that in addition to what Dr. Sampson will be charged with, we need to get involved with that?
I think that we need to make sure that prior to those individuals going into those meetings, that they are meeting outside of the meetings with the AIB to get the clarifications that we as a committee may need, or the other counties' committees, if they have them. Because the questions that continue to be asked have not been answered. And I think if the counties come together to the AIB and say, we all share this same concern, or we all have the same question, or we all really need the same clarification, and here's why, that maybe those things would be prioritized by the AIB. Like a one-off, this county or that county.
And I do think that that is what the discussions are with the individual county implementation coordinators. I don't think that there are any other counties that have a committee like this. Justin, talking to other people around the state. But a couple of things I want to say just for the group in general. We need to be clear that there are no bonuses in the blueprint. These are ways to increase salaries. So they're not bonuses for obtaining different levels of achievement. They are built into salaries. And we also have to be very careful. This is no longer Kerwin. Kerwin fed the blueprint. The blueprint is the law. So we are discussing blueprint, and we have to be careful with our messaging, because Kerwin was a study. We're not in Kerwin anymore. We've got to move forward and message the blueprint. And I think that kind of wraps up my individual question, my member report too. So Ruthie, you can just check me off on that one.
But you know what, that's a good point, because what Mike brought up earlier is that Joe hasn't really had the availability to be here in the position long enough. Kevin was here for a minute, and but I think from this moment on, a lot of the questions and maybe concerns are going to be answered, because I think had Kevin or had Joe been here, Joe could have said, well, you know what, Melissa, that's part of my function in the AIB position. So I think we'll get those answered. And I think what we can do is to the degree that makes sense with full transparency, we can ask those questions of our individual board members to include Joe, and get his take on what he does on our behalf. And then I would think that if a joint letter was going to be sent to the state, which we often do on many other committees, no doubt, Tri-County, we do a lot of joint letters, that he would be the person that would represent this group, talking to the other two counties and their AIB representative to formalize whatever information they want to go back to the state. We would be aware of it. We would have the ability to debate during this discussion, and then he would finalize that in this discussion and then move forward with it. And certainly, Melissa, when he's on the next time around, we can have this discussion again. But I think everybody understands that there's a financial cost to it, and there's a philosophical cost to it if we don't voice our concerns jointly. But again, I think that's part of what Joe's responsibility is as the AIB board.
And Mark, that bill that was passed by the General Assembly in this past spring was called House Bill 1450, Blueprint for Maryland's Future, Implementation Plans and Funds, including alterations. It did change some deadlines that Kevin has presented before, but it revises the formula for dedicated sales tax revenue to the Blueprint Fund, and even establishes a Blueprint Fund. So that's one bill that we may want to have our financial staff review and present on.
Yeah, no doubt. And it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a discussion on that bill so that we're all on the same page, that we all understand it together. So we can look at, bringing that forward on the next agenda.
Okay.
Any more discussion before I move on? Okay, Mike Schishler is next on the list.
Thank you. I would just make a comment. I would suggest, and perhaps you've all done this already, but to check out the Strong Schools Maryland website and what they have about the blueprint. It's I think pretty well organized, and they take each of the 5 pillars and they give you a PDF snapshot of what the key points are and where it's going. So I think it's good. I used it personally again to give myself a refresher before this meeting to see what I've forgotten since we met last time. And it also might be a good source to use when we're talking about communicating with our community, to let them know that that's a spot that they can find more information about the blueprint. And an added note is, for those of you who had the chance to work with Malcolm Funn, you know that he passed away last week, and he was a strong, to put it mildly, a strong supporter of the blueprint and Maryland, Strong Schools Maryland. And as many people have said, he was a bridge to many groups, between groups, among groups, and he's going to be sorely missed. His services, I just saw this morning, his services will be next Tuesday. And I'd have to check the church again. It's in Huntingtown. But again, please remember Malcolm, and he left behind a son and a brother. So thank you.
It's Chesapeake Church, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you, Wilson. Thank you, Ruthie. That's it.
Hey, Ruthie, on some of what Mike said, we should establish a list of links with the identifying subject matter so that we have that as a revolving opportunity for folks to go to. Put them all in one place and make that known to the committee. And we can talk about it after the fact, just so that I can be part of that solution.
And I'm not sure the school system was working on a separate website with all that information. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Right, I don't want to reinvent the wheel, but I want to make sure that if any member finds a useful link for whatever reason, I want to make that link available to everybody so that we can all be on the same page as much as possible.
Okay. Joanna Stallings is next.
I have no additional comments to make at this time.
Okay, thank you. Donna Estenso.
So I guess mine is more of a question, and I haven't missed a meeting, but it doesn't mean that I haven't missed something that was going to be added to the agenda. Member reports. So I'm very unclear as to what exactly this is, or what my member or other people are supposed to be reporting. That's the first piece. So I want to make sure that I'm prepared for future meetings, because I see a report and questions as 2 different things. The second part of this that I would like to know about is, in any type of meetings, especially ones that are being recorded and are being viewed in the public, when do we have closed sessions? Because I believe that some of the things that I've heard talked about during this time could have been handled much differently within a closed session of our work group, because that is what we are. We are the stakeholders. And so that when we are holding these type of open meetings, I feel that we would be able to provide more answers versus for the community to still see a lot of unknowns even amongst ourselves. So I know this is being recorded. Everyone in the community can hear me. And I'm fine with that, because really and truthfully, I want the community to feel assured that everybody is working to make sure that the law and what changes might come in House bills, as Tony referenced, that we are on top of it and that we're making the community feel good about that, that they don't have any, reasons to be concerned.
Thanks, Donna. Two parts to that I'll answer the first part. So we will redesignate member reports to committee reports, commissioner reports. We'll label it so that that's just your philosophy of whatever you want to tell us, right? But I think that we should probably put on committee reports when we create a committee. If that committee has something to report, that's different than you would report as an individual from a philosophical way to a bringing the entire committee up to understanding the latest information that was gathered. So we'll adjust that. We'll send out the new agenda items so that everybody, and with descriptions on what each of these mean. And I will get with the county attorney on that, who will also help us with executive session items. There's a lot that goes into what is authorized by closed meeting acts, et cetera, what you can say, what you shouldn't say, what should or should not be an executive session. And I will seek the advice of our county attorney on that. And Tony, obviously, from your side of the house, you can certainly have staff weigh in as well. But I do agree, Donna, that some things should be in executive session, but they need to be there because they're there more by law. And John can work with me after that to make sure I'm heading in the right direction. But I understand what you're talking about. We live it every Tuesday. John, you have anything? Okay. But certainly we'll work on that.
Thank you, Mark, because that does make sense, like committee reports, as we make some subcommittees.
Yeah.
And they come with a report that makes perfect sense. And I don't know if if it's a member comment, like if members have a comment, if they could make it under public comment, but you got what I'm saying. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, Donna, in the member, so and I know that you've seen, because it's such great entertainment, I'm sure that you have seen our Board of County Commissioners meetings. There is a time for public comment, which is truly for the public. And then there is time for the commissioners to give kind of a closeout of what they've learned from the previous meeting. And it's really much more lighthearted in that sense. Maybe you had a constituent contact you about a specific function within the AIB or in the blueprint in general, and you want to make that known. Now, there are a lot of different ways that we can do that, but that could be one item, is where you said, hey, I was at church and a group came up to me and said this, or I was at a town hall meeting and they said that, and that just puts that information to the bigger picture, and then we can make adjustments from there.
Perhaps we could label this this section, just to borrow from what you and Donna said, members' closing comments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep committee reports as one separate section, and then give the chance for members to make a closing comment.
Yeah, and the transparency of that also is that we want the public to look at it and know kind of exactly what it is that we're talking about just by the title of it. So we'll clean that up as much as we can as it relates to this commission.
Mark, I just want to go back and comment on this a little bit, because when you have this kind of freestyle comments,
Yeah,
it's away from what you plan to discuss and share with the committee and those kinds of reports. And I think it's a slippery slope if we have these comments like that at the end of the meeting. We have an agenda before us. If the comments are relative to an item on the agenda, then it should be taken at that time. But it could evolve to something where it could be a platform for other communication that's not even relevant to what we're talking about. So I would be cautious in adding this new item to the agenda.
Well, and I understand, Wilson. I think what we do, and the point well taken, because you and I have both lived it out here in front. You know, it can get out of control rather quickly, and all is meant well. But because I think all of it's meant well, but we can have that discussion. And I think what we do before the next meeting is we kind of put some description behind what the true intent of the agenda item is for, and maybe that cleans it up for us. We can still use it, but that's something that we can bring back to the board and have the board weigh in on, and as a board tell us which direction we need to go. But I think clarification, like you point out, is important.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ruthie, next.
The only ones we have left are Tony Navarro and Mark Willis. So if you guys have closing statements, Tony?
Yeah, I would like to thank everyone again for their participation today. And again, NBC is the foundation for the career ladder, and it's an opportunity to enhance the career and compensation for our teachers that across the state of Maryland.
All right, thanks, Tony. The only item that I have on there besides thanking everybody, and for me, I know most of you out there are educators by lifelong joy decision. I'm always a student at heart, so I learn more just doing this every day. I certainly appreciate this group coming together. With the committee in general, a comment is that if we have an individual that's not making the meetings, at some point we need to have that discussion, because we need all of our committee members from the locations in which they represent. So that's just a topic that we can talk about going forward. So with that said, if there are no further comments, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I figure we got Ruthie, I believe that's an all hands for the aye. All right, thank you, everybody. And Ruthie, do we have the next date already set so that
Our next meeting is September the 7th at 2 p.m.
all right. See everybody September the 7th. I'll get with Ruthie and we'll send out some of those emails that are just asking for some of that update, and we'll bring that back on September the 7th. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Stay healthy.